Hello all, welcome to yet another live session of Narayana IAS Academy. So here, this is Sureka Bhaskar, as all of you know, discussing or bringing to you like different topics from both the Hindu as well as the Indian Express for our discussion of the daily news analysis. So these topics that you can actually see on the screen become very important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination, and without any further delay, let's actually start with our discussion, okay? So the topics for the day, the first topic has been taken from page number 7 of The Hindu, the job crisis undermines the state legitimacy. So as the title suggests, this particular article discusses about the current status of the availability and the unavailability of quality employment opportunities in India. So it talks about what is the current market or the job trends in the Indian economy and how this particular absence of quality job is impacting the democratic institutions and the political systems, and how it is actually bringing economic instability in the country. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the things that the dimensions that I actually told you, and apart from that, we'll also be discussing about the creative destructive approach and also the concept of universal basic income. Moving forward, the second article, so of course this article will be from the mains perspective, okay. The second article will be the world needs blue helmets who act as blue helmets. So this particular article has been picked up from page number 6 of The Hindu. So this basically talks about the United Nations peacekeeping force. Okay, so in this particular article, let's discuss about what is this United Nations peacekeeping force, what is the eligibility criteria, where do the people who are actually deployed over here as soldiers, where do they actually draw their salary, and where they are sourced from, whether it is a separate entity or they are actually sent voluntarily by different nations, and India actually stands where in this United Nations peacekeeping. Let us actually discuss about that. So this is a prelims article that we'll be discussing. And moving forward, the Biodiversity Conference of Parties. This particular article has been picked up from page number 17 of the Indian Express, where we will discuss about what do you mean by conference of parties and how did this idea first of all originate. When did the consciousness with respect to environmental sustainability and the protection actually came to the global community? All that we'll be discussing, and in particular we'll be discussing about the Kunming Protocol, how it was actually adopted, and specifically we'll be discussing about the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. So here this particular topic becomes very important for your prelims examination. So now let us actually move forward. The first article for the day, as I told you, is actually the mains article, okay. So here the job crisis undermines state legitimacy. Let us actually see what are the dimensions we'll be discussing in this article. So first we'll be discussing about India's job crisis, and moving on we'll be discussing about the concept of employment and unemployment. As you know, with respect to India's vast population, we have one of the largest demographic dividend. That actually means the number of youth, that is the working age population from 15 to 60 years of age. We have a larger demographic dividend. And how do we actually utilize? Is there underutilization of these human resources in India's economy? How is it actually threatening the political institutions and other democratic institutions? How is it actually causing instability in the environment? Instability in the economy and the ecosystem is what we will actually see. So this particular topic becomes important for your GS paper 3 in your mains examination: economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development as well as employment. Now moving forward, there has been a previous year question asked in the year 2022 with respect to that of the welfare schemes. Besides the welfare schemes, India needs a depth, that is a proper and efficient management of inflation and unemployment in order to serve the poor and the underprivileged sections of the society discussed. So as such, unemployment, poverty, social welfare, all that becomes very important for discussion, specifically with respect to your mains examination. Now let us understand what this particular article is discussing about, okay. So, India is actually facing a severe shortage of quality jobs. What do you mean by quality jobs? You know, a job or a sector which actually employs skilled people, which is a formal sector. At the same time, it actually gives returns to the economy, or, in the terms of profit or increase in the GDP or a significant contribution to the economic growth, etc. So, India is facing a severe shortage of such jobs. This threatens both the economy as well as the legitimacy of the democratic institutions. Why do they say it causes threat to democratic institutions? Because recently, if you see the strikes, and there was a lot of unrest in Bangladesh, right, where the unemployed youth actually came together and they protested against the government due to the unavailability of jobs. Okay, so what happens is such kind of restlessness among the youth, it actually turns as a clash, okay, to the government, and this actually distorts their efficient functioning, thereby resulting in the threat to the democratic institutions, particularly the political or the government which is in power. So this actually requires urgent political and structural reform. So that is what has been discussed in this particular article. Let's actually move forward to understand. So let's see what is the problem of the unavailability or lesser quality jobs in India. Okay. So first of all, what is the current status that India is actually having with respect to employment? Let's understand. First of all, India is characterized by low levels of employment. Okay. So if you see, only around 40% of India's working age population, that is the demographic dividend, has been actively employed. Okay, and also there is a dominance of informal sector. For example, the percentage of population who are employed in agriculture is actually more when compared to the services sector, the IT sector, etc. Okay, so this is what is the first 2 points talking about. So India is characterized by low levels of employment. If you see the data from CMIE, that is nothing but the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, it has said that only 40% of India's working age population is employed. Okay, so this means there is a heavy underutilization of human resources. Okay, this is very, very important. Also, there is a dominance of informal sector, I told you. So approximately around 90% of India's workforce is in the informal sector. So when you are in the informal sector, you actually do not have the privileges that the other people have. Like for example, in terms of pension, then in terms of any kind of social security, in terms of the PF, or an assured return from your workplace, all that you do not have. So that will actually have a characterized by lack of social security, there is no stable income, and the opportunities for professional development. Also, this makes you vulnerable to any kind of economic shocks. For example, a lot of informal people who were daily wage laborers, the people who were working in agriculture, all these people, they actually suddenly lost their job. So the economic shocks impact on them were actually considerably higher when compared to that of the formal sector employees. Next one, there are statistical concerns. That is, we do not have exact numbers of who are the underprivileged people, and also we do not have the exact definition of what do you mean by the quality employment. Okay, and also if you see the statistics in India that is taken into consideration, if a person works even for 1 month in a year, that person is considered to be employed. So if you take the statistics, or if there is a socio-economic census that is actually done, the count is not perfect. So that is what they are saying. So there are statistical concerns. Okay, so even if you work for 1 month in a year, then you are considered to be employed, and also it does not account for quality of employment, and many have stopped looking for work altogether because these people have been discouraged because of unavailability of jobs and also being unabsorbed by the other sectors. Okay, so this causes sometimes even rage, it causes mental illness, etc. Okay, so they actually are very remorseful people, they are always against the society. Okay, so this can also alter the political system. For example, in 2016, if you see, when the United States was characterized by higher a job market specifically for the Indians and for the people from other countries. What happened is that was the time when Mr. Donald Trump had actually won the elections, because he brought about an agenda of America First policy. Okay, so this will even turn the decisions in favor of one particular political party. So citizens sometimes will not be able to make an informed decision whether the agenda will be true or not, whether it's practically feasible or not, whether it is going to really bring about employment in the American economy or not. Okay, so that is how the political decisions are also taken up in haste. So this is one such example. Now moving forward, what are some of the social implications? Okay, so here, just be ignorant of what is written behind me in this board. Here what you need to understand is just the concept. Okay, so first of all, because of the quality job problem in India, there are a lot of social implications. First, obviously there is rising inequality. Okay, so if you see only the topmost 1% of the population of India, that actually controls around 40% of the wealth of the economy. This is what it is saying. And whereas if you see the bottom 50% of the population, no, they actually account only for 3% of the wealth. So this actually causes a lot of social tension. That is why they say the rich is getting richer and the poor is getting poorer. The second one, there is a lot of youth frustration because they are actually not absorbed into any particular job. So that is the next dimension that we need to understand. And also there is a lot of brain drain, due to lack of quality jobs. That is the, youth are actually not getting a job according to their skill. That is number one. And they are not being absorbed into the labor market. What happens? There's a lot of brain drain from our country where people go in search of better opportunities elsewhere. Okay, so here, as we discussed, the first thing is rising inequality, where top 1% actually account for 41% of the wealth, and you see bottom 50% hold 3% of the wealth. So this reduces the opportunities for the economic mobility. The next one is frustration among the youth, because if you see the population under the age of 35, they find themselves to be very, very irrelevant. Okay, so they have this frustration. Also the mental health issues are actually seen among the youth these days. And also the next one is brain drain, because they actually find better opportunities abroad, leading to a loss of human capital as well as innovative potential for this particular country. So this is what it is. Next one, let's see what are the political implications. I already told you, right? That is, the decision of voting and a particular political party to power actually changes. Okay, so that is how they can tweak depending upon the current situation. Politicians actually know how to get you into the trap of getting them, in power, and after which the same thing continues. Okay, so here reforms are actually basically not their agenda. Their agenda is to come back to power. So this will have political implications. How does it have political implications? First one, there is threat to democratic institutions. We saw. First one, there is threat to democratic institutions. We saw, because this disillusioned youth, they will actually become prone to the political manipulation as well as extremist ideologies. Here example is, there were so many youth in, Jammu and Kashmir, where if you actually pay them money because of unemployment, they took up their profession as stone pelting. Okay, so stone pelting actually became their profession. So this is how there is growth of extremism in the country because of unemployment. Okay, so that is one example. Then rise of populism as well as authoritarianism. Okay, so here what happens, it will draw people towards the authoritarian leaders, and this has been observed globally in whichever areas were characterized by unemployment as well as economic distress. Okay, so this is how it is. So this actually affects the long-term political stability. Next one, this is, I told you, an example of Donald Trump in 2016 elections, how the election results actually came out in his favor. Now, the state of political response. The political party or the government have actually come up with major reforms. Let us actually see. Political responses have been very, very inadequate as well as inconsistent as far as what this article is discussing about. As I already told you, the political parties are actually focusing more on their victory rather than focusing on the systemic changes that they have to bring. This is the second point. Next one is people are trying to bring about creative destruction approach, okay, on one hand. What do you mean by creative destruction? It actually sounds like an oxymoron, right? Creative destruction is nothing but you actually do away with the obsolete policies with the use of innovation, technology, advancements, etc. and you bring new jobs in the place of old jobs. Okay, so this is what is called as creative destruction. On one hand, they have been relying on creative destruction approach where the old jobs are actually taken away and new ones are actually brought. On the other hand, there are also policies like the universal basic income, etc., which is a huge strain on the government. Okay, so if you get on to giving a basic income or assured income to every section of the population, to everyone in the country, what happens? It's going to cause a severe economic strain on your exchequer, right? So this is what it is. And also this has resulted in limited efforts to address the structural issues, okay, because we do not have a clarity on which kind of reforms are we going to bring forth for the people. So this is the state of political response in India. Now moving forward, I told you a creative destruction approach, right? So there is nothing much to understand. This is nothing but it was a theory that was given by Mr. Joseph Schumpeter. Okay, so this was Joseph Schumpeter's theory. This talks about innovation driven market evolution. This is nothing but you actually alter the jobs with innovation as well as technological advancement for the betterment of entrepreneurship. So this is what it is. What are the advantages is that it actually gives you high quality jobs. It gives more innovation. It is actually said that it will give you higher efficiency, and also this will encourage more investments and participation as well as more entrepreneurship, that is people coming into business. And when all that is done, it will raise the global competitiveness of your particular country. So this is how it is. How it is going to work? They are going to, how it works is, for example, if Indian government tomorrow comes up with creative destruction approach, they will first perform reforms in the labor market. Whatever is required or whatever changes are required in the employment market, they will do. So it focuses on the labor market reforms. It betters, by reducing the stringent regulations, by giving approvals quickly, it is going to improve the business environment. And also when all this is done, what happens? There's going to be more focus on the skill development. So skill development with the industry aligned programs in order to foster future ready capabilities in the workers. At the same time, we need to see the other side of the coin, which has disadvantages as well. That is, it may lead to short-term employment. And other thing is, it might widen the inequality because over here, whoever is actually adapted to that technology and advancement will be absorbed into this market. So this would widen the inequality, whereas the other people still in the informal sector, they will still feel insecure and won't be absorbed over here. Next one, might leave vulnerable sections behind, already discussed, and this actually requires a significant transition time, and it won't happen immediately. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, excuse me. Next one, what is the concept of universal basic income? Universal basic income is nothing but it is a kind of an economic policy where you actually say that you receive, for example, if I am the citizen of this particular country, I receive a regular basic income, that is unconditional cash payments to all the citizens, because my country is actually aiming to reduce the poverty. That is, it is giving you a definite financial stability or security. So this is the concept. Okay, so how it works is, here monthly what happens is that the government will transfer me some amount of money, okay, through direct benefit transfer. So this happens, that is to the accounts linked to Aadhaar and bank accounts, fund by rationalizing the subsidies, reallocating the resources, and the rich people will actually be taxed more, and that will be given to the poorer people. So that is how it actually works. Whether it is advantageous? Of course, yes, because it's going to reduce your poverty. It is going to bring down, or what you say, it is going to bring down the financial instability, or in other words you can say it's going to enhance your financial security, isn't it? Then it also shows that your government is actually for a welfare administration. Okay, so here it is also a part of what? DPSP, isn't it? That is establishing a welfare state is a part of DPSP. And also it gives a freedom of choice for the beneficiary. If I am getting that, I can actually choose whether I have to use it for my LPG, whether I need to use it for my food grains, food procurement, whether I have to use it for the education, etc. So that gives a freedom of choice to the beneficiaries. Also, if you see the other side, that is disadvantage, of course it's a huge fiscal burden for the population India has. For how many people will you give a definite income? So this is what it's it's a fiscal burden, and also it will reduce the work incentive. Of course people will not be motivated. It does not address the dignity aspect over here, and it can also lead to inflation because everyone is actually having money. So what happens? Ultimately the prices and everything will actually go up. So this is what is the concept of universal basic income. So what is the way forward? See, there are a few topics like this where you need to take down notes which are already been discussed by good authors. Okay, so this particular article is a very good article. For example, the points like universal basic income, they have discussed we have discussed the advantages and disadvantages, and also creative destructive approach by Joseph Shumter. All this, if you quote, no, these are brownie points that will make you actually, it will give the opinion about you to the examiner, that you are very well prepared to answer the demand of the question. So way forward is you need to do a lot of education reform as well as focus on the skill development. Also there has to be modernization of the industry. At the same time there has to be diversification. That is, not everyone can be qualified to get into the IT and the services sector, right? So accordingly the sectors have to be modernized, and also there have to be labor market reforms, whereas the informal sector is also subject to improving the kind of jobs that they actually offer currently. So skill development, industrial modernization, and labor market reforms. Here I'm just telling you or taking you through the basic concepts, because don't focus on this, because this will be provided as notes to you on your DNA. That will be posted to you on your Telegram, as well as it is available on the website. Okay, so understanding concept through these DNA classes are very important, so that you have your notes, you go back, and when you read through you can recollect as to what we've discussed in this particular session. So this is what it is. Now moving forward, there is also promotion of entrepreneurship in MSME. That is, rather than focusing on bigger sectors, you can also focus on this MSME, that is a micro, small as well as the medium scale enterprises, which is the backbone of the Indian economy. That has to be strengthened, and also there has to be a comprehensive social welfare system that actually includes what you say. You have to have accessible healthcare, you should have affordable housing, you should have accessible education, and there has to be proper social security, ensuring that citizens actually feel safe in the country. So that is what a social welfare system actually has to be established. So this is what is being spoken here. Okay, now moving forward, so the first article we actually discussed it quite in brief. Okay, it's just to give you a hang of what is the unemployment despite having a huge demographic dividend. Why is unemployment still prevalent in India? Because of the quality of jobs that is available. Okay, so that actually widens the inequality. So why is there an inequality? Because only 1%, that is top 1% of the people, handle over 41% of the wealth, whereas the bottom 50% actually control only 3% of the wealth. And also the jobs that are available are focused only on the skilled personnel, and also our education system is not very much reformed. And also it talks about the kind of informal sector, how people in the informal sector are prone to the economic shocks. One example was at COVID-19. Because of this, what are all the social implications, starting from your mental health to the kind of discouragement that individuals actually face in India, and what are all the political implications, that is, when you are actually unemployed in a society, how to what extent it's going to influence your political choices. Okay, and ultimately how it is going to destine, or you can say decide, the fate of your country. All that we've actually discussed in the previous article. Now, let's move to the second article. The second article is talking about the world needs blue helmets who act as blue helmets. You can wonder, what do you mean by blue helmets? Okay, so here in this article, blue helmets actually refer to the UN peacekeeping forces. Okay, so this is what is the topic of discussion over here. So you need to understand, when did this concept actually come, why did it come for the first time, where it was actually operationalized, and what is the participation of India in this particular regard is what we will discuss here. Okay, so here, moving ahead in this particular article, we'll discuss about UN peacekeeping force, as well as who has the ultimate authority to decide whether this particular UN peacekeeping force has to be deployed in an area or not. So in that regards, UNSC, whether this particular autonomy given to the UNSC is correct or not, for which the author says there has to be UNSC reforms as well. I'll explain what it is. And so this particular topic becomes very important for your prelims examination under current events of national and international importance. Okay. Now moving forward, there has been a previous year question whether the what are the impediments India is actually facing in pursuit of a permanent seat in the UNSC. For this, you need to know what are the different organs of the United Nations, of which the United Nations Security Council is one such, where it actually has 5 members, that is the US, UK, and it has France, Russia, as well as China. When these countries actually have veto power. What do you mean by veto power? Any decision or any member who has to be a part of this UNSC or any kind of peace agreements, the negotiations, anything that comes out actually has to, receive the vote of all the 5 members, and one member failing which, the decision actually stands still. It will not actually be implemented. So that is what is called as veto power. So that is the impediment India and countries like South Africa are facing, right? Because when they aspire to become a member of this UNSC, there is resistance from countries such as Russia as well as China. So that is why we say, should this particular, impediment be worked on, whether the UNSC actually has to be enlarged. So this is what, in the backdrop of which this question was asked in your examination. Now let us see what is the article discussing about. So the article basically discusses about the shortcomings of the United Nations in effectively using its peacekeeping forces, particularly in the current conflicts like the war in Ukraine, that is the war that's taking place between Russia and Ukraine, as well as Israel and Palestine, or Israel-Gaza conflict. That is basically, the UN peacekeeping forces are international armed forces, just like how we have the CRPF, the BSF, etc., which are national armed forces, okay, that come to rescue, that actually aim to establish a conflict-free India. Like that, what happens? The international armed forces are called as the UN peacekeeping forces. They usually have been very, very successful in establishing peace in various regions like Kosovo, Sudan, etc. But of late, the author actually says that they have not been effective enough in implementing their peacekeeping strategies in the areas of Gaza, Israel, Ukraine, Russia, etc. So why? That is what is being discussed in this particular article. Okay. So moving forward, despite having over, see, you know why these are called as blue helmets? Because here people wear blue helmets for the simple fact. Okay, this is why it is called as blue helmets. So the UN peacekeepers, that is this peacekeeping operations, actually have around 1 lakh peacekeepers. Okay, they are also called as blue helmets, and they are actually governed by a robust system of UN charters. UN charters, it basically is like the constitution or a blueprint on what and all actually should be taken, what are the actions, where they have to be deployed, in what cases, etc. So UN charters like 6, 7, 8 of the United Nations, what happens? It actually helps for enforcing peace through these peacekeeping forces. But what happens is, Now they have merely been reduced to bystanders in case of serious global concerns like the Israel-Palestine conflict as well as the Ukraine crisis. So that's what this article says. Historically, they have succeeded in peacekeeping missions in places like Cambodia, Kosovo, then Timor-Leste, but they have actually failed in regions like Rwanda, Bosnia, etc., where they were unable to prevent the atrocities. And also the recent conflicts as in Ukraine and Gaza also is a failure to act decisively despite the availability of having so many manpower. And the article also argues for the reforms in the United Nations. I told you, right? That is, this entire decision of deploying the UN peacekeeping forces where and in which countries actually depends on the decision of the UNSC, which have 5 permanent members. Here, members are very, very important. Who are they? One is the US, next is the UK, next is your France, next is Russia, and next is China. Okay. So what happens is the decision to actually act in terms of Ukraine crisis. Ukraine is fighting against who? That is Russia. So obviously Russia wouldn't give, its vote in saying that okay fine, deploy it and go give peace or establish peace in Ukraine, right? So it wouldn't. So because the veto power is focused on these 5 members, what happens? They have not been effectively able to deliver their peacekeeping operations. So this is what they are saying. So the author says, why do you actually restrict? So UNSC has to be subjected to more reforms. Reforms as in there have to be more expansion where members like you have India, where you have South Africa, etc. aspire to become members in order or to swiftly deliver the peacekeeping operations wherever it is actually required. So moving forward, let us understand about the United Nations peacekeeping forces. These are nothing but international armed forces. We already discussed. It was established by the United Nations in order to establish peace in areas affected by the conflict. And establishment is, it is not explicitly mentioned in the United Nations Charter, and it has been evolved through practice. So for the first time where it was actually established, it was in 1948. First time it was established in order to monitor the armistice agreement between Israel. So what do you mean by armistice agreement? This agreement was actually the result of the first Israeli war. Okay. So first Israeli war actually was between Israel as well as the Arab nations like, Egypt, etc. So in the conclusion of the war, they actually wanted to end all the conflicts and to establish a ceasefire agreement. That was called as the Armistice Agreement, came in 1948 as, the conclusion of the first Israel war. Okay. And it was formally recognized during the Suez Crisis in 1956. This is nothing but it is the second Israel Arab war. So during this period, this was actually formally recognized. Okay, so here peace was established through the UN peacekeeping forces. So moving forward, you can see the biggest contributors to peacekeeping forces where you have Bangladesh, people from Nepal, India actually stands here. It's among the top 5 contributors. And then you have Egypt, Indonesia, Pakistan, Ghana, Rwanda, etc. Okay, so here you've understood what is basically the UN peacekeeping forces. What is the purpose? Obviously, it is actually used to help the countries in order to move from the zone of conflict to peace by providing a very, very stable and a helpful environment, or a secure environment is what you actually say here. And then they are not meant to enforce peace, but see, they are not here to enforce peace in your area, but rather they actually, what do? They actually preserve the peace. They actually work on the principles of impartiality and non-intervention. So which organization or who is the nodal agency who is actually seeing this? So the peacekeeping forces are subordinate to the leadership of the United Nations. So whatever UN decides, it is actually implemented. Next, They are normally deployed as a consequence of the UNSC decision. We already discussed you need to have veto and everything. However, on certain occasions, it can also be decided by the UN General Assembly. Okay, this is what it is. Moving forward, the operational control actually belongs to the UN Secretary General. And if you see, very important, consent of both the parties in the conflict are important. That is, for example, if there is a conflict between Russia and Ukraine, here both Russia and Ukraine have to say or give their consent, okay, in saying that, okay, we are fine if the UN peacekeeping forces are there to help us to preserve our peace, okay. So here consent of both the parties is actually important. And categories of operations, there are two categories. One is unarmed observer groups. What is that? It is deployed to monitor ceasefires and to gather the information. That is, once two parties actually decide that we are going to go on ceasefire, whether it is actually happening or not. So that is unarmed. I'm just going to observe whether you're keeping up your promise or not. So that is what. Next one is lightly armed military forces. What is this? They engage in more robust tasks, okay. They see whether there is compliance with peace agreements and they protect the civilians, but they are also authorized to use some amount of force, okay. Primarily only in case of self-defense. They can't go and attack. But in case of self-defense, they can actually involve in light armed military. So this is what it is. This is the category of operations. Next one, how are they compensated? How are they paid? For example, I am involved, so for example, I am in BSF or I am in CAPF and I am suddenly, wanted or sent by my country on a mission to serve the United Nations peacekeeping forces. So who actually pays me? Let's see what it is. So all these dimensions become very important for your examination, okay? Whether they actually, just as how in polity we discuss whether this person draws the allowance or the salary from the Consolidated Fund of India, whether it is subjected, to vote, to be voted by in the parliament, all that, okay? So similarly, this is also important. So the UN has no military forces of its own. Very important. Okay, and the member states provide on the voluntary basis. So India is a member of the United Nations, so we actually provide, okay, on the voluntary basis. We provide our military as well as the personnel, the military personnel which is required for each peacekeeping operation. They are paid by the own government. So important, they are paid by their own government according to their national rank and the salary scale. And countries who are volunteering uniformed personnel to the peacekeeping operations, they are reimbursed by, the money is actually given by the United Nations at a standard rate, provided the General Assembly actually says okay to it or gives a nod. And police and other civilian personnel are paid from the peacekeeping budgets established for each operation. So for particular operations, there are particular salary. The UN also reimburses the member states for providing equipment, the personnel, as well as the support services to military or the police contingents. Okay, so from where they actually receive or draw their salary becomes important. What have been the accomplishments? So far, they have actually accomplished in establishing peace in conflict ridden areas like Cambodia, Mozambique and Namibia. This we already saw. And despite various challenges, what happened? They have been awarded even the Nobel Peace Prize in the year 1988. And if you see India's contribution, it is one among the top 5 largest contributors to the UN peacekeeping, and it has been involved since 1950. Very important. Now moving forward, if you see, India deploys personnel to challenging missions even in regions like South Sudan, the Central African Republic, etc. And additionally, India has led initiatives like, if you see, Unite Aware platform for peacekeeper safety and deployment of women peacekeepers. Okay, so here again it becomes important, that is role of women. So here you can even search names of women, their accomplishment, whether there have been any leaders in United Nations peacekeeping, so that you can actually keep an answer ready. Okay, so it is participation of women. So now this particular topic is actually over. Now let's move to our last topic, that is the Biodiversity Conference of Parties. So what do you mean by conference of parties? Let me just throw a quick light on this and then we will move through because it's a more of a static and an understanding part. See, so many times we actually get to see in our newspapers, sometimes they write about the COP21 of the UNFCCC or COP16 of the UNCBD, COP2 of the UNCCD. What are all this? So here we need to have a proper understanding of these terms and what are the agreements, protocols as well as declarations that are actually brought about. So what happened was, let me give you a small brief on it. So after the World War, what happened during the World War? There was actually, use of nuclear weapons, etc. There was also, before that, there was, industrial revolution that was characterized by huge emissions by the developed countries, etc. So post the impact of such emissions as well as the nuclear weapons, etc., what happened is the countries actually suddenly got the environmental consciousness. They felt that the changing climate is actually not in our favor. So it is our responsibility in order to actually protect the environment, in order to make sure that there is a sustainable development. That is, we actually leave behind a better earth for the future generations. That is why the world communities actually came together. Okay. So they met and finally in the year, they met in Rio de Janeiro. Okay. So this is in Brazil for a conference, and that was called as the Rio Earth Summit. So this was also called as the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, UNCED. So these people actually came together and they met at Rio de Janeiro in the year 1992, and this, it was called as a Rio Earth Summit, or it is called as a United Nations Conference or Convention on Environment and development. So this is what was the first part of it that actually happened. So what was the key outcomes of this Rio Earth Summit? The key outcomes were actually four, I would say. First, it actually resulted in, so let me say what are they. Yeah. So first, outcomes. The outcomes were twofold. Okay. So this actually resulted in bringing of three conventions. Okay. So what were the three conventions? The three conventions actually include, first one was UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change, and this actually focused on combating simple climate change. Okay. The next one was UNCBD. So what do you mean by UNCBD? It is United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. So this actually aimed at protecting the biodiversity. Okay, this was very important. And the final one is UNCCD. This is nothing but United Nations Convention in order to combat desertification. So this was to combat desertification. Now, world, communities came together at the Rio Summit of 1992, and here the outcomes were actually manifold, which actually resulted in three conventions. One is UNFCCC for combating climate change, UNCBD for, Convention on Biological Diversity. Next one is CCD, that is one to combat the desertification. And the next one was Agenda 21. So what was this Agenda 21? This is nothing but it was, a set of, or you can say a blueprint on how to maintain sustainable development. So this was called as Agenda 21. Okay, so these were, of two folds. Okay, so first were three conventions and the next one was Agenda 21. Now moving forward, let us see about this UNFCCC, and we are going to particularly discuss about this UNCBD because the 16th Conference of Parties. What do you mean by Conference of Parties? They actually, that is, this community come together every year. Okay, so that was called as Conference of Parties. It is the 16th such Conference of Party under the UNCBD. That is what is going to take place. Okay, so here we'll be discussing about UNCBD, UNFCCC, UNEP, and this particular topic becomes important for your prelims examination, general issues on environmental ecology and biodiversity and climate change, and mains it comes under conservation. So now you understood these three. Now let us move forward. Yeah, so if you see, first one was UNFCCC, right? So first, if you take this UNFCCC, that actually focused on what? United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It came up with a lot of declaration. It came up with a lot of protocols. It came up with a lot of agreements, and one such was the Kyoto Protocol. All of you would have read about this Kyoto Protocol, or at least heard about it. So this was in the year 1997, where it was a legally binding agreement for the which actually set the standards or the limits for the emission, or it actually was brought in order to curb the GHG emissions by the developed countries into the atmosphere. So this is the Kyoto Protocol. So this is under UNFCCC, and similarly one of the latest was the Paris Agreement. Okay, so this actually came up in 2015. This was to actually limit the growing or the rising earth temperature, the global temperature under 2 degrees Celsius. So this was actually UNFCCC. What was the second convention that actually was brought into? That is UNCBD. What was the second one? It was UNCBD. So this was actually to protect or to preserve the biological diversity, and the first one was the Cartagena Protocol. The protocol that was Cartagena Protocol, which was in 2000, and this actually aimed to protect the biodiversity from GMOs. So what do you mean by GMOs? Genetically modified organisms. So how do you actually protect? So that is why you would have heard about the genetically modified cotton, BT, brinjal, etc. So in order to protect the biodiversity from such genetically modified organisms, Cartagena Protocol was there in 2000, and the next one was the Nagoya Protocol. So Nagoya Protocol. So this actually focused on the equitable sharing of the benefits, okay, of the genetically modified resources. So whatever benefits you get out of genetical modification, that has to be equitably shared. So that was what it actually focused on. And you would have also heard about Aichi targets. Okay, so these targets were a part of Nagoya Protocol, that were a set of 20 targets or global goals, okay, that focused on the protection of biological diversity spread over 10 years. That period was 2011 to 2020. So this is what was the Nagoya Protocol. And the final one is what? The final one we discussed about is United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, right? So this has only one declaration, that is nothing but the Ankara Declaration. Okay, Ankara, Turkey. Okay, so this actually aimed at establishing the neutrality. So what neutrality? Degradation neutrality, land degradation neutrality. So this is what was actually discussed here. So this was the UNCCD. Do you understand? And this actually dates back to 2015. So these were all the different conventions. Now you know what is it. So if you see the title, the Biodiversity COP. So you know what is the convention? It is UNCBD, and here you are going to have a conference of parties, which is the 16th. And in the previous conference of parties, that is COP 15, what happened is there was actually this Kunming protocol that was brought. Okay, so similar to that of Cartagena Protocol, Then we had the, what is the next protocol we actually discussed about? Nagoya protocol. We actually had the Kunming protocol also. So now having known all this, let's quickly discuss whatever we have seen. There has been a previous year question on the international treaty on plant genetic resources, or sometimes they can ask match the following. This is related to what? Whether the Paris climate change that is under UNFCCC or not. Nagoya protocol is with respect to what? All that. And what are the substances? For example, in the Kyoto protocol, whether GHGs are there. There, what are the substances which are actually involved and included? Whether it is legally binding or not. Such questions can come in your examination. So here, as I told you, 16th COP on CBD is taking place in Colombia. And where is Colombia? South America. Okay. So here it is approximately a year after adoption of the Kunming Protocol on Biological Diversity Framework. So this is why. Why it is very, very important? Because if you see, there has been so much of threat to the natural ecosystem. Okay. So if you see in this picture, 1 million. What is 1 million? This is the number of species that are at risk of extinction in the next few decades. And if you see, 75% of the world's land is significantly altered. And also if you see with respect to the surface area of the forest, around 400 million hectares of forest were lost between 1990 and 2020. And about 10 million hectares are being lost every year. And if you see high seas, 1.44% of the high seas is demarcated as protected area, and all of this is near Antarctica. Next one, around 75 to 199. This is the metric tons. This is estimated volume of plastics in the world ocean. So because of all this, we need to bring about a conservation or a agreement which actually conserves the biological diversity. So that is why it was brought into picture. Now moving forward, a quick read about the UNCBD. It is a multilateral treaty and it is overseen by the UNEP, that is the United Nations Environment Program, and this was opened for people to sign it at the Rio Earth Summit, okay, and it actually entered into force in December 1993. And whether India has signed it or India has ratified it, very important. Yes, India ratified this in 1994. What is the difference between ratification and signing? Signing is just that you say, yes, I am actually okay with these targets. But what do you mean by ratification? Accordingly, you actually bring about a legislation for your own country, okay, which is binding on your entire country. So we will move forward and see. What are the three main goals of this convention? In order to conserve the biological diversity, sustainably use the biodiversity, and finally, there has to be equitable sharing of the benefits that arise from the resources. The headquarters is in Montreal, Canada. Moving forward, who are the members? Currently, there are 196 members who are actually party to this particular convention. India ratified. According to that, it brought the Biological Diversity Act in 2002. I told you, right? And if you see, United States has still not ratified this. Now, if you see what are the supplementary agreements, you know the Cartagena Protocol that we already told, right? So, this we've actually discussed. And also we've discussed about the Nagoya protocol, under which you have the Aichi biodiversity targets also, which are a set of 20 targets spanning over a period of 10 years from 2011 to 2020. Now moving forward, let us see what was this Kunming protocol or the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework that was actually brought about. It was brought in the 15th COP of the CBD. So this actually was brought in 2022, and this replaced the previously existing strategic plan for biodiversity and its Aichi targets. Very, very important. Okay. And the framework is that it actually aims to halt and reverse the biodiversity loss by 2030. Whether it is legally binding or not, no, it is legally non-binding in nature. And what is actually the goal for 2050? If you see, it sets 4 overarching goals for 2050, that is halt the human or the anthropologically induced extinction of species, sustainable use of biodiversity, there has to be equal sharing of benefits, and also closing the biodiversity finance gap of around 700 billion per year. So this is what it actually focuses on. Now moving forward, there are targets for 2030 as well. This is also important, okay. What do you mean by 30 cross 30 momentum? In today's newspaper, there was a word, okay. This actually means 30% for the planet will be protected by 2030. Let's see. It has various aspects, okay. So the first one with respect to conservation, conserve 30% of land, sea and island waters. Next, restoration, restore 30% of degraded ecosystem. Pesticides, reduce the risk from the pesticides at least by 50% by 2030. Nutrients, reduce the nutrients which is lost to environment at least by 50% by 2030, and reduce the introduction of the invasive alien species at least by half by 2030. So these are the 30 cross 30 target, or you can say the targets for 2030. Now moving forward, having very well discussed the three most important topics, I think that the conceptual clarity actually has to stay with you. Even suddenly tomorrow, if you've actually asked anything about the IC targets, you must at least have a fair idea of what we discussed in class today, okay. So moving forward, let us actually solve certain, prelims question. IT targets sometimes mentioned in news are related to, no need to even think of it. It is under United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. So the answer here is B. Now moving forward, with reference to United Nations peacekeeping forces, consider the following. So they are explicitly mentioned in the UN Charter. No, they are not. Okay. So it is just by practice it has actually come. So first it came into practice in 1948. First, Israeli war. Next, UN peacekeeping forces can only be deployed when both the parties to a conflict accept. Yes. Next is countries volunteering the uniformed personnel to peacekeeping operations are not reimbursed by the United Nations. So this is a very, very, very important this one. So here I would want you to give the answer for this particular question. So please mention in the comment section. Now moving forward, let us solve the mains practice questions, okay. The question talks about describe the quality job problem in the Indian economy and critically assess how far approaches of the creative destruction and universal basic income are effective. So this is very, very simple, right? So moving forward, we have actually broken this down into introduction, body, conclusion. First, you will actually talk about what is the rate of unemployment in India, and you say around 39.5% of working age population are employed in 2020 to 23. There is underutilization of human resources. And also here you introduce the concept of creative destruction, how you are going to replace the obsolete jobs with your technological advancements, etc., which is going to boost your entrepreneurship. And next, moving forward, you also discuss about the advantages, disadvantages, okay. Next, moving forward, you speak about the universal basic income, how it is going to enhance the financial security, but socially, if you see, it's going to discourage the entire work population, okay. It's going to keep them without any kind of aspiration. Also, it is going to be an economic burden on the exchequer. So this is what you'll actually discuss over here. And towards the conclusion, here you can say that both the efforts actually have their own potential benefits for the economy. However, you need to actually see the core issues, whether the core issues of employment as well as economic security are addressed over a long period of time. It has to fetch you long benefits rather than being just in your political manifesto. So with this, we've actually come to the end of our discussion, and just a short snippet on what all the Narayana IAS Academy team is actually undertaking in order to enhance your preparation. So as our title and our logo suggest, where aspirations meet achievement, of course your aspirations will meet achievement if you're enrolled with us. And here we have our NCERT foundation course, where we'll actually have give you a glimpse of what the NCERT is all about, discuss with you in detail what are all the concepts that have been discussed in your NCERT before you move on to your GS advanced course, where this is actually given to you by our subject matter experts with enough of updation said and done. Next, we have our daily newspaper read, which is actually released around 11 a.m. in the morning on your Telegram channels, where you've actually given the set of articles from both the Hindu and the Indian Express, which are very, very important and relevant for your UPSC CSE examination. Moving forward, we actually have our DNA YouTube sessions where we actually pick up the top most important articles for comprehensive discussions, and the same is given as notes for you on your website. So this is the daily news analysis notes. Apart from that, we have the integrated assessment system where you are tested based on your conceptual clarity, and here we actually know what is the takeaway or your understanding of the classes, as well as the Navigator magazine. And also we have the N100 test series where you have specialized mentorship that is actually given by a specialized experts and teachers. And apart from that, we are also involved in nourishing you with the TGPSC, that is Telangana state exam, as well as the APPSC examination, where we have a different set of experts for that. And also we have our N digital app as well as the Navigator website, where our entire content is actually ingested there. So even in case you actually miss a class, you can actually refer and get access to all the notes over here. And moving forward, we have our Anugati as well as our daily answer writing program, where your answers are evaluated by our experts, because ultimately answer writing becomes very, very important for your mains examination, and it's accumulation of your mains as well as an interview that's going to fetch you a rank in this examination. Moving forward, we have our YouTube homepage where we actually have our shorts as well as interviews that we've actually taken of our experts. And also we have the list of live videos that actually goes every day, and we actually have a daily analysis as well as the paper specific discussions. Okay, so our social media presence, you can actually see us on YouTube. Apart from that, you can actually spot us on Telegram, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc., and on all the possible social media handles. And you have our YouTube live videos here. And also we actually conduct this particular Samvad, which is a very, very innovative product of particularly our IAS Academy, where we actually converse with the experts for you in terms of workshop, where they actually give their experience and the kind of preparation that they have done, so that they've actually achieved and reached this particular milestone. This will be an important takeaway for you for nourishing your particular preparation. Okay, so let's all embark on this journey in order to achieve success and to enroll in all of our programs. Here you have to know that our admissions are open for the 2025-2026 batch. So here comes, or this actually is we have come to the end of our daily news analysis session. For further live updates and more such interesting discussions, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.